We don't all start with a massive collection of video games. We have to start somewhere. And sometimes we have to restart. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay. Welcome to Square Pegs. And today we're talking about collecting, just kind of collecting in general, and having to restart things. Maybe kind of switch things up, or if there's an emergency in your life, having to sell off some of your collection in order to make sure you're able to keep living. And I had to do that a few years ago. I had to sell my entire retro collection, and over the last probably about 10 years, I built it back up. And I was looking at some of the NES stuff I've gotten recently, and I realized that this is stuff that I would have gotten earlier had I really sat and thought about it. So, wanted to share with you the games and the items that I would use to restart my NES collection if I had to do it today. And you have to start off with a console. You can't play NES games without a console. Now, for me, it would be this top loader. This is something that I wanted for years, and I actually just recently picked this up at Replay It Retro, which is one of our local stores here around Kalamazoo. They're over in Paw Paw. It's a great store run by fantastic people, one of my absolute favorite spots to go shopping at. And I've wanted this for a long time, and I have always kind of hesitated to pull the trigger on it until I had the opportunity to do so. And I love that this has been added to my collection, because I don't think there's a better way to play NES games. I do think there are more convenient ways to play NES games, though. And one of those things is the Retron 5. Actually, what I use to capture probably about 95% of my gameplay footage for any video you're seeing. Like, anything you see today is captured on my Retron. And I do like that it has a lot of different options, both for shaders and for smoothing options and things like that. And it just works. I just think it is a nice thing to have. I know a lot of people don't care for Retrons, but I personally like them. One of the other things, of course, you need is a controller. And with that top loader, you better believe that a dog bone controller is the way to go for me. I do think this is the best NES controller that's ever been made. Now, that's discounting things like the Advantage and the Max, both of which I have, both of which are great, both of which are fantastic things to add to a collection, but they're not really necessary. You only really need something with a D-pad, start, select, A and B. And that's what you get here. And this is ergonomically comfortable. It's really great to use, and it just works really well and looks great with that top loader NES. But that's not the only thing I would suggest getting as far as controllers go, because in today's modern landscape and today's modern setup, sometimes you're a lot further away from the TV than you used to be when we were younger, and that's where the Origin 8 comes in from Retrobit. This is a wireless NES controller that you can plug in both to an NES and via USB. Connects great, controls great. I like the ergonomics. It's basically a classic NES controller brick like we usually had back in the day on those rectangles, but works really well, it's nice, and it plays games fantastically well. Those would be the things that I would add that are kind of accessories. Now, there's plenty of other stuff you can add as well. You can go with EverDrives. EverDrives are great if you're not looking to break the bank or have a huge collection, or you just don't have the space, and EverDrive is a great way to go. Now, as far as cartridges go, I've got a stack. And one of the things I think you guys all know are the fact that I would be immediately going back and getting my entire Mega Man collection. I have the entire NES collection for Mega Man now, but if I really had to stop and think about it, if I really had to pick what would the 3 be that I would get right away, because obviously I would get 1 through 6 immediately. I would get Mega Man 1 again, because it's something that I didn't have when I was younger. I didn't have this until, I think, earlier this year, actually. This is one of my favorite retro pickups of the year. I would get my favorite Mega Man game, Mega Man 2, because, I mean, it's my favorite. Should go without saying. My favorite Wily Castle, my favorite design. I like the different robot masters in it. It is just, to me, the perfect Mega Man game. Again, as I've said in the past, that doesn't make it the best, but for me it's the perfect Mega Man game. And I would pick up Mega Man 5. No real nostalgia reason behind this one. I actually think this is one of my least favorite of the series, but the price continues to go up on it, and it's something where I think if I was just restarting today, if I was just kicking this collection off again, I would get that early because I don't want to have to pay through the nose for it. Some other games I would pick up, I would immediately get Star Tropics, and it would have to be a complete in-box copy like the one you're seeing here, simply because, for one, this was my favorite NES game for a long time. It was something that I went back to constantly, and this particular copy here that my wife got me is a complete in-box copy with the letter, with the manual, the whole nine, and Star Tropics is great. I own it loose as well, but there's something to be said about having this one complete in box because of how necessary kind of the experience of dipping the letter in water is. It's just one of those games that needs to be CIB. One that doesn't need to be CIB, but I gotta thank John Hancock for giving this to me because he's the reason I have it complete in box, is Ice Hockey. This is John's favorite NES sports title, and one of mine as well. And it's for my favorite sport, so this is definitely something I would want to add to the collection. Now, some of you might be wondering why Blades of Steel isn't on here, and it's simple because I don't like Blades of Steel as much as I like ice hockey, and to some of you that makes me a fool, and to me that just means it's my preference. This is the one I like, this is the one I go with. I think it is a better game overall than Blades of Steel. I think it is more enjoyable than Blades of Steel. Blades of Steel is still great, and I still love it, but I'm going to go with ice hockey every day of the week. Another one that I would go with complete in box, and I say that because I had multiple opportunities to pick this up loose over the years, and I didn't do it, but I did get Battle of Olympus complete in box because this is one of my favorite games. Now, you're not going to find a Zelda or a Zelda to the Adventure of Link on here. I like both of those games, but that would be more if my wife was starting an NES collection. This one's for me, and this is my preferred Zelda, is Battle of Olympus, because I think this is a better version of Zelda 2. It's Greek mythology, so you know I'm a sucker for that, and just love this game. I think it's one of those kind of underappreciated and underrated classics on the NES that so many people overlook, and it's a shame. It's a great game. It's absolutely fantastic, and just a really cool concept. Anytime that Greek mythology is used as kind of a base layer for what a game is built off of, that makes me happy. This one is another complete in box necessity, and this is something that is probably my favorite, or one of my favorite NES RPGs. There's a couple other I have in the stack here that I want to talk about, but Final Fantasy. And the reason I want this complete in box, one, the manual is fantastic, the maps are great. It's a really the best way to describe it, I think to me this kind of feels like a big box PC game just on a console based on how much crap you get in the box, which is really, really fun. Like, one of my favorite things about old PC games is getting stuff like the cloth maps or the really thick books of lore telling about this amazing world that you're about to dive into, and I really feel like that's what you got with Final Fantasy. And because of that, it is one of my favorite RPG experiences of all time, because playing it for the first time was just mind-blowing. And it's still a solid and fun and exciting game. Love this one. Really, really thankful to the people that I have been able to get the pieces from to put this all together. I got the maps and the box from my friend Thor. I found the manual here at a local shop that I picked up. I picked up the game at a convention a couple of years ago. It's just, I've piecemealed this complete in box game together, and I love it because of that. And I might do it the same way if I had to, but for now it's safe on the shelf. It's not going anywhere. All right, moving on now to the final complete in box one, and I have to thank my friend James for this one. This is the first game I ever bought with my own money. It is my favorite Super Mario Brothers 2D game, and it is Super Mario Brothers 2. And I know a lot of people pop into the comments and tell me how much it is in a Super Mario Brothers game because it's actually Doki Doki Panic. Yes, I know, you're not telling me anything I haven't heard before, but it is a Super Mario Brothers game because it is Super Mario Brothers 2 here in the States. Even Miyamoto says it's a Super Mario Brothers game, so I'll take it. It is officially canon. If we did not have Shy Guys and stuff like that in modern games, I would give you a bit of a reprise on that, but we have all these characters that have moved into the Mushroom Kingdom. I'm counting it. Of course, you can't have Mario 2 without Mario 3. Arguably a better game. Not my favorite, kind of like Mega Man 2 into Mega Man 3. I think Mega Man 3 is a better game, but Mega Man 2 is my favorite. Mario 2 is my favorite. Mario 3 is a better game. I mean, it's brilliant, right? Like, things that changed in Mario 3 are things we still see active in Mario games today, and it's a necessity to have this game, and I would love to have it CIB, but I haven't really gone to that level yet with my Mario collecting, and I mean, I just like this one because it's got writing on it, and this used to be Tim's. I don't know who Tim is, but thanks, Tim. Your sacrifice is appreciated. Next one, and this is an absolute must-own, because I do think this is one of the best games on the NES, and it doesn't matter the fact that it's a licensed game, it doesn't matter any of that. This is Sunsoft at their absolute best, and this is Batman. I love this copy because this was a copy that was at our local children's hospital here in Kalamazoo. I found this at a used store and picked it up. I love that it's got the markings for Bronson Child Life on it, and just cool to know that this game helped bring some smiles to kids' faces as they were sick, and that's important. The game itself, though, is fantastic. It's got a great challenge, a great look. The music is top tier, like it is Sunsoft at their absolute best, and it just sounds and looks amazing, and you really can't go wrong with that. It's just a fantastic title. This, I think, might be the game I have had in my collection the longest, because this is my childhood copy of this game. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. This is the only NES game I held onto other than Star Tropics, my loose copy of that, which is downstairs actually on display. I remember getting this game and just being absolutely blown away by how much it was like the arcade game, and it was identical. I swore up and down it was the same game. It wasn't, obviously, but it was something that I loved then. It's something I love today. It is one of my favorite multiplayer experiences of all time. I think the game is wonderful to look at, fantastic to play, and I know a lot of folks prefer Manhattan Project over this, but I can't get into Manhattan Project. I've never been able to. But TMNT2, the arcade game, that's my stuff. I absolutely love that game. Here's one a lot of people have a question on, is just when I say that this is one that I would immediately get back and one that I was excited to get added to my collection. This is Popeye. Now, why do I love Popeye? I've told the story on the channel in the past, but Popeye is something of a family member. My grandfather was a World War II torpedo man. He fought in the Pacific Theater. He was on PT boats. And when we were younger, when he came back, he told us all that he was in the Navy with Popeye. And my grandfather could draw a picture of Popeye, so, you know, to 5-year-old Jay, that was enough evidence there. He could draw a picture. It looked exactly like Popeye the Sailor Man. Of course he was in the Navy with Popeye. And even as I grew up, when I was, 8 or 9 years old, I realized Popeye's a cartoon. Grandpa wasn't in the Navy with Popeye, but I've always had an affection for the character, and I loved that there was a video game of Popeye, and I loved that my grandfather thought it was neat that there was a video game of Popeye. He didn't have a lot of time for video games. He liked Duck Hunt. He was great at Duck Hunt, but he thought it was really cool that there was a Popeye game. All right, a couple of sports games now, and I do love sports titles. I already showed you ice hockey. I would have Punch-Out on here, but I only own regular Punch-Out. I don't own Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and I feel if you are going to have a must-own Punch-Out game on your list, it probably should be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So we'll put Punch-Out on here with a gigantic asterisk. Once I own Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, it would be on this list. Let's just put it that way. There's nothing wrong with Punch-Out with Mr. Dream, but I want Iron Mike. All right, so a couple of baseball games here. First up is going to be Baseball Stars. This is from SNK, one of the greatest baseball games ever made. I don't care what anyone says. I have loved every version of Baseball Stars I played, whether it's the Neo Geo Pocket Color version, the NES version, the sequel, arcade releases. Baseball Stars is top tier, as is Baseball Simulator 1000. Now, I love Baseball Simulator 1000 more than Baseball Stars just because of nostalgia. It was my baseball game when I was younger. It was the one I played the most. And it's a fun game. It's a really fun title that does something really ambitious with the game of baseball. It adds superpowers to it if you're using one of the pro teams. Just tap the select button when you're on the mound or up to bat. You can activate your power and use it that way. It's great. It's not nearly as pretty as Baseball Stars, and I think there's an argument to be made that Baseball Stars is probably a better game overall, but I do love Baseball Simulator 1000. All right, we're going to do the 3 most recent pickups I have now for the NES, and we're going to close out with 2 of my absolute favorites. First up, Destiny of an Emperor, which is one of my favorite RPGs on the console. This is Capcom doing an RPG, which was unusual at the time. They didn't really do that. And it was something that was different. It was a different kind of RPG because your hit points were basically your troop counters. The storyline was great. It was a unique experience and something I'd never really seen or played before. And it was a game that I had forgotten about for years until I did a Capcom NES ranking video a few years back, and I fell all in love with it again playing it on an emulator. I finally found it when I was at Torg this year. I picked it up, and it was wonderful. It's a magnificent game. I picked it up at Game On, which is a great store there, and love having it back in my collection. Love being able to play it now whenever I want to, because it's just a marvelous idea for a game. As is this one here, a wonderful license and an underutilized license as far as video games go, because when I stop and look at things like right now with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is amazing, such a fantastic game, I stop and I say, you know who would make a really good video game protagonist in a first-person game like that? The Lone Ranger. Now, the NES version of Lone Ranger is great. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit RPG, a little bit action, but it's a fun title and one that I've always been a fan of the Lone Ranger. I loved the Lone Ranger comics. I loved the show. I loved the Disney take on the Lone Ranger. And it's something that I enjoy stories of heroes, and the Lone Ranger was an absolute hero and just a cool character to have featured in a video game. Another one that I really loved, and one that I have only seen a few times at conventions, so when I found this at Game On, I immediately picked it up, was the original G.I. Joe release. I've had G.I. Joe The Atlantis Factor for about a year. It's a great game. It runs on the same engine. It's like almost an identical title, if I'm being honest with you, but it was one that, because the price was so high, it was a little bit prohibitive for me to pick it up, but having it now, it's one of those things where I look at it and I go, if I ever had to start over, I would start there, because I like it better than the Atlantis Factor. Both are great, I like that one better. Last two games, one more from Sunsoft, another Sunsoft all-timer, a fantastic title here that just has really fun, different gameplay elements where there's both side-scrolling shooter and then kind of an isometric shooter view, and vehicle combat. So it's got pretty much everything, and just an absolutely banger soundtrack is Blaster Master. This was a game that my mom picked me up during what I call the greatest Christmas ever. She found some store that was going out of business, and I don't know how she did it, but she found it, and she found just this pile of NES games that were like $5 or $6, and she bought me so many of them, and Blaster Master was the highlight. I got Blaster Master, Ninja Kid, and it was amazing. It was so mind-blowing to get like 15 video games for Christmas, which was unheard of because we got like 3 or 4 games a year at the time, and to get just this huge box full of NES games was amazing. One of the games I got that year is this one here, and that's DuckTales. And I wish this was that copy, but I did actually get rid of it. I had spoken originally on the channel when I first talked about DuckTales, and I said this is my childhood copy, but I misspoke on that because I forgot that I had gotten rid of it. This is one of the first ones I had picked back up, so mea culpa for that. But DuckTales is kind of the perfect example of what a licensed game should be. It takes the license, it's reverent to the license, it makes the license fun, it makes the game enjoyable. It's just a perfect video game, it really is. Capcom at their best. The Capcom Disney games are amazing, and that's one of the best ones. There you have it. That is how I would restart my NES collection, my preferred way that I would restart it. Are there some other things I would add? Yeah, if I owned them, but I don't own them now, so I can't really say I would restart a collection with it if I hadn't already done so. But I look at the probably 75, 80 NES games I have, and the ones that I featured here are the ones that would be first out the gate for me. Yes, Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt is not on here. Stuff like The Legend of Zelda or Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, not on my list, but doesn't mean they're bad games, just not ones that I would go after immediately. Let me know in the comments down below, what 5 games would you restart your NES collection with? What's your preferred way to play? What system would you go with? Would you do a top loader? Would you ignore the NES entirely and go with a Famicom? Would you just buy a clone console like a Retron? Let me know. Hey, if you're new here and you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button. The engagement really helps the channel out. If you really enjoyed the content, be sure to stick around, click subscribe. I'd love to have you here. And until next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.